Hello and welcome to the MacGuffin and
The Red Herring.
I'm the MacGuffin.
And I'm the Red Herring.
And we're here to discuss Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I think the show suffers.
And I love it.
So there's a lot of hater rants out there and there's a handful of people that enjoy it. And so we're here to discuss both. Hope you like what we have to say. And if not, let us know in the comments. This week's episode of The MacGuffin and the Red Herring brought to you by Ye Old Gym, personal training and online fitness coaching. Find us on Instagram. Alright, welcome to episode 2 of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. For you keen observers out there, we are wearing the same outfits. The reason for that is simple. We recorded all 18 hours of this in one go. No, we didn't do that.
We locked ourselves in your basement.
Yeah.
And said, we're not leaving until we solve this.
No, the clothing symbolizes the contrast of our opinions. The red, angry, and then the blue, peaceful. You know, it's and it reminds me to do laundry every week.
Exactly.
So yeah, all the necessary things. Okay, so starting with the Harfoots. I'm actually gonna bring this closer because then it's easier. And yeah. Not blocking anything important. I like Nori and Poppy's relationship as a whole. It does feel a bit like trying to boil Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin into two people, though. That's something I get a lot. It's like there are times when they have the heartfelt bond that you really get from Frodo and Sam, but then there are also times where you get the goofy Merry and Pippin.
Yeah.
I can understand trying to do that. There are times I think it works. There are times I think it's a struggle.
I don't ever feel like it totally contradicts what their actual character is.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel you because I definitely do say they're pulling from Merry and Pippin dynamic here. Yeah. I see it. I don't ever feel problematic about it.
Yeah.
But maybe after you point out some of the things, I'll be like, ew, yeah. We'll see.
Well, let's see what happens in this scene that made me think of that. We open with Galadriel in the ocean, swimming, trying to swim 2 Atlantic Oceans by herself, all by her onesie.
So, there's so much to pontificate about this sequence. This is one of my favorite sequences. All of the Galadriel in the ocean sequences, I really, really like. I think that they're up there as kind of pieces of old-fashioned opera or old
Beowulf swimming in the ocean.
Yeah, it's definitely again kind of pulling on those poetic strings. It's literature. It's screen literature. It's less show making and more literature. I feel like so. But I remember you had some qualms with it when you first watched it, if I remember correctly, and the thing of it is when you watch the ocean sequences, you kind of have to infer their purposes, which I think is probably where a lot of people were so upset with it. They're like, why are we looking at this? And if you're not looking at it to find a meaning in it, you are kind of like, okay. So I can't wait to discuss what I see in it, but at the same time, I don't think anything it's hard to say staple it down yes, this is the purpose of this shot.
Again, most of it for me is just this effectively is attempted suicide.
Well, I mean,
it's like in D&D when the party. I feel like D&D parties are good at self-preservation. So in D&D, if we wanted to go back to Middle Earth, rather than try to swim there, we would have gone to Valinor and tried to convince someone to send us back.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, well, we're going to jump off the boat, DM, save us. And that's what this feels like to me.
Well, I mean, again, this is her... Get into the meaning of it. She's choosing to jump off. She's choosing to jump back into darkness. Some might read it as she's choosing to. She's obviously willing to sacrifice her own well-being for her cause, for her oath to her brother, or to her hunt. So we've already established she's not thinking rationally here at all. She's just reacting to like, this is my calling. It's a super zealous move. It's not a rational move. She's like, I'm gonna do this. I'll figure it out later. Like, I just need to do this. She's driven by the blood rage.
Jump and then find a parachute on the way.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah. So it's if you view it through like a rational lens, I get it. But like, it's poetry. It's supposed to be high myth, kind of absurd, high fantasy. Like, I know later on, some people try to justify this by saying like later on they established that elves never tire. There's that line, but then
they also refute it later.
Yeah,
which we'll get to in this episode.
Yeah, they refute it, and then but also it's just like, I don't even need that justification to buy this in this world. Yeah. So like, elves, this is a very, very bad idea for anyone. She's not making it on any rational basis. She's following her faith. She's following her cause.
I have to also believe, though, that speed of achieving goal, it's still going to be faster to spend a month trying to talk people into giving you a boat and sailing back than trying to swim, just by how much faster boats are than people are at swimming.
Yeah, I don't think she ever expected to have a return ticket. I think it's very much... the reason why the symbolism in the first episode are like going into the light, it's because it's a death of herself. It's a death of the life that she's leaving behind. So it has to be viewed like that. It's like, this is your last chance. Yeah. Beyond this point, there is no coming back. And so she makes the decision to go. And it has to be viewed in that lens, because that's what it is in a symbolic form.
Again, I fully accept all that. I just think this is a suicide attempt, and that's not. That's it. That's all there is to it. Sure. Okay, so we're gonna watch a little bit and see what exactly made me think of Merry, Pippin, Frodo, and Sam here. So I think it's exactly that. They get in this little like slapping match, and then one of them falls down, and it makes me think of like when Merry and Pippin like drop all of Farmer Maggot's crops while they're like running and tripping over stuff. So again, it's just like
horseplay.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
I think this first line. Well, I guess not technically first line, but first line of real significance is it's hot. It's not hot, which I feel like this is something that was made just for the show, because they established in Galadriel's episode 1 that it's so evil here that our flames give off no heat. And so this feels like a total red herring, or at least a misdirect, to try to get you to be like, wait, it's so evil here that the flames aren't hot. This has got to be an evil dude. So it's supposed to make your ears prick up.
Well, and also when you view it from above, it literally looks like the Eye of Sauron.
Exactly. Exactly. Like there was a couple of times when they're just like, "Ooh, is he evil or is he bad?" Yeah. And if I could just tangent on that real quick though, I think almost everyone suspected he was gonna be Gandalf. I think like even before the show came out, people were like, "Oh, that's young Gandalf." But very quickly in this sequence, anyone who's familiar with the lore is like, that's Gandalf. He was sent when Sauron was making his come up. He is the counter to Sauron. As every Iluvatar is like, your mission is to put that boy in check. That's your whole purpose in life. And he's sent to the hobbits to learn how to be humble and self-regulating, because that's Gandalf's saying, is he was the most humble and down to earth of the Almayar, actually, but anyways, but his element that he's associated with is fire, and his kind of like his boss, Manwë, is, or I might be mispronouncing that. Tell me how to pronounce it in the comments. But
it's Manwë.
Okay, I won't be saying that for all these episodes. But Manwë is, one of the Valar. He is supposed to be like the head honcho. He's your Zeus kind of archetype, where he's in charge. He's the main guy. He's all that is good in the world, and Gandalf is his kind of like pet. That's like, he's like, you know what, you're the right guy for the job. Mm-hmm. So Manwë had kind of fostered Gandalf, and so that's why in these shots you see him surrounded by fire a lot, attracted to fire, and whenever he uses his powers, he's kind of like channeling the essence of Manwë. So it's always like air elemental. So every time you see him use his powers, you're like, it's Gandalf. It can't not be Gandalf. That's his thing.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe in season 3, they're like, oh, it's one of the blue wizards, and I'll be totally beating my own foot. But
it's Saruman. Jokes on all of them.
Yeah.
And I have mixed emotions about this. In general, I think I like that, let's call him totally not Gandalf for now, doesn't have full control over his powers yet. I think that's a good choice, because then he can't just solve every problem right now. And I think that is an issue that we see in a lot of other places, where it's just, oh, you're a main character, so you just get to win. And I think this is one of the instances where we don't automatically see that.
Okay. I know that this is also lore accurate. This is one of those things that, like, a lot of people harp on this not being lore accurate, but if you go back and you read the Silmarillion, there's a chunk of it about like how when the Maiar came to Middle Earth, or in general, just the mortal planes, we'll call it for D&D terms. They had to learn what it was like to have a physical mortal shell, and so they do in one of the later episodes. They do a great job of that, like how taxing it is to use their powers. And there's a little, like, I really like one of the spins that they put on it, which is hinted at, but is it's a piece of kind of like deep lore that doesn't get I think is subtly hinted at here, that doesn't get enough credit, is that like using your powers to alter creation is an act of evil, kind of. Mm-hmm. And so it's like that's how what's his name? Not Malcor. Morgoth. Yeah. That's how Morgoth. Like that's his whole thing. Is he's like, I want to make my own living creatures. I want to make my own world. I want to make my own blah 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 blah. Yeah. So it's his kind of disrupting of creation that is an act of evil. And so like when the Maiar come here and they try to like drastically change things, it's bad news bears. Yeah. And so like that's why even in like the Peter Jackson films, Gandalf holds up his stick and it's a glow light, and you're like, oh wow, big powers. Like, aren't you supposed to be one of the most powerful creatures? Mm-hmm. And all you did is like cast light. No, it's because they have to restrain themselves. They're here to guide, not to control or change. Mm-hmm. That's their purpose. Yeah. Quick other point about his use of powers here is, and we'll see this throughout, is just how singing is the magic of this world. And so like the world is sung into creation. It's that resonance, that harmony, the kind of emotion of singing is kind of what Tolkien was so infatuated with. And so that's why you just watch he's kind of moaning and trying to figure out how to communicate in this mundane plane because he's so used to singing. I think that's a really nice touch. I also think that it's cool that the music plays in there where his mouth's just agape, and it's not meant to be taken in the scene, but you're definitely supposed to make that connection of like a chorus and singing and how he's trying to sing, but he doesn't know how to do it with this equipment.
Yeah.
Real quick, tinfoil hat here. I have no idea if it's ever going to pay off, but Maltha is definitely like fulfilling a sort of gray worm kind of entity of evil within the hobbits, the Harfoots camp here. She's always trying to repress curiosity, stick people down. You know, she's definitely enforcing the bad, and whether or not she's an active agent, I'm gonna put it out there now. That's why I put on a tinfoil hat. Season 2 reveal that she's actually a spy.
She's not. She's not. I do think that she is a major reason why I and so many people just blatantly hold to the Harfoots are evil as a whole. But yeah, which we'll touch on later.
Yeah, she represents the bad in the culture.
Yeah. So I actually have my next note about this line. Sadok says, more than likely we're safer in camp than we are out. Which, like, I get you're not safe while you're traveling, but also, how do you think that you're safer in camp? Your wagons aren't circled, you don't have any walls, you don't have any weapons. There's a line from 13th Warrior that I really like, where one of the characters says, there's not even a presentable fence, you couldn't keep a cow out of this place. So it's like, how do you think you're safer in camp when this is the setup of your camp? Let's see. No, do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, I could get nitpicky about it, but I think that's a funny observation. Like, I guess they have fire, they have number. Maybe if it was wolves, they'd be intimidated by a campfire. I don't know, but no, it's a fair point. I think this is more than anything. This line is meant to show the Harfoot mentality of like let's not go out. If we stay here, if we stay in our world, we'll be safe.
Yeah.
But I think if anything, that's what it's supposed to illustrate. But fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Next bit, I'm gonna mute and play and probably talk about it as it's happening. I say that I think Nori and Poppy stealing stuff is funny. There is one bit where I think it's Nori pops on screen, steals a lantern, and then walks off screen in the direction that Sadok is looking, and Sadok doesn't see her. Like, just because she walked off screen, she's no longer within possible vision. I think it's right here. So that goes that way. Now right here, she is grabbing lanterns, running that way, and he looks directly in the direction she's running, but doesn't see her. And then here it's like they've got lanterns, so they're sneaking him around, but they're as brightly lit as is possible to be. Like, if you're really that concerned about sneaking, don't have lanterns. Just let your eyes adjust to the ample moon and starlight that there is. And then no one else will notice you. Let's see. Oh, and then based on this conversation that they have, where Poppy just says, like, she just believes that he's important. I have running moral of the show: if you believe something hard enough, it must be true. Sauron is still alive in spite of thousand years no evidence. Humans are bad in spite of 1,000 years of no problems with them. I meant to take care of Totally Not Gandalf because I found him. There's just so many instances of, well, I believe it, so it's true, without anything to back up or reinforce it.
Yeah. No, so in a typical show, I don't think there's any problem with questioning their reasoning. In fact, we have characters in the show that question each of those reasonings because it's not, frankly, rational. You're correct, but that is that's one of the themes of the Tolkien universe. It like as a motif is faith and hope, and like there's that the thing that like will come up later a lot, especially when we get to the boat scenes of the Dark One and Eru Ilúvatar are constantly nudging things, and they're suggesting like this is your purpose, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and then the free will of the characters is whether to acknowledge it and accept it or not. So that is the magic of this world. It's not. You can't really acknowledge it as like this is a rule, because if you acknowledged it as a rule, then you would have everyone walking around and be like, well, I don't know, everyone Luvatar told me to kill him.
Yeah.
So you can't acknowledge it in script, in text, but it is something about the world that's established. So I think it comes up a lot of like I just feel like I don't know. I know this is my calling. This is my purpose, and what you choose to do with that moment defines who you are.
Yeah, I just think it's a dangerous hero example to say, well, if you believe something hard enough, then it must be true. So go out and do it. Sure. Like if I completely, wholeheartedly, fully believe that I can fly and go jump over the edge of the Grand Canyon, I don't think that's a good potential lesson to be teaching people. No. If I fully believe that I am meant to be in Africa right now, so I fly to the east coast of America, jump in the ocean, and try to swim, probably not a good decision.
So your problem with it being in the story is not from the context of the world. It's more like why are we telling this story to people?
I think part of it is this is a dangerous moral to be teaching people. I think that a lot of it is in the context of the world, though, also because there's a lot of evidence that is counter to what these people believe. And at some point, I think that you need to follow evidence.
Like you need your characters to be doing something for a reason.
Yeah.
I think they try to address it, but maybe it's not satisfying. I don't know that given what it is on the screen, it'll ever necessarily satisfy rational scrutiny. But I think probably the closest we get is Nori's explanation of like he could have fallen anywhere. He fell right here. Like I feel like if this was if he's special, and I think maybe she says this conversation later on too, but she says like I think he's special. I don't think I'm special. I think he's special, and the fact that he could have fallen anywhere, but he fell close to me, makes me feel like I should take care of him. So like that's as close as we get to like a rational argument. No, I feel you on the morality. I mean, we always have to analyze what messages we're sending. That's why we do what we do. Is to think about is entertainment and art, literature, everything is meant to provoke, to be thought provoking, and to get you to search yourself. So fair enough. I think there's a lot of good in there too of not when you know something's wrong, because this is also coming from an era of like essentially, I mean, gosh, on the internet it always comes back to the Nazis, but I think
Godwin's law.
Yeah. But like Tolkien, I think he tried to kind of be like, hey, I'm not really trying to make an allegory. Yeah. But at the same time, like he absolutely was processing how fascism rose in Germany and in Italy at the same time,
and fascism rose because there were people that believed they were meant for power, and in spite of question and pushback from other people.
Well, the thing of it is like these people aren't. Well, I guess not all of them are in power, but it's when everyone tells you to just go with the flow, and that flow tends to be evil.
Yeah.
You have to make a choice to do good.
Yeah.
And I've always taken it as that's the message from Tolkien, and that's the message for this being in his stories. Is like you have to being good is a choice. So that's what the intended lesson is. But you're right. It's a just like any good. Well, I don't know any good, but just like a lot of our moral lessons, in a lot of our religions, a lot of our greatest stories can absolutely be used for evil too.
Yeah.
So, but I have to view it through the lens of Tolkien's what he wanted to say, and I've always gotten from his interviews, his work, that like his intended takeaway is you have to choose to be good, and it's going to be a hard choice sometimes, and people are going to tell you you're stupid for doing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I really like in the Hobbit movies is Gandalf is asked like why he chooses hobbits to go on missions, and he equates it to like because doing good is about all the small things. Mm-hmm. It's about making all of the small right decisions all the time. It's not about doing one big grand thing. And since being good is about doing lots of little things, the smaller people are like kind of representative of that.
Yeah.
That also.
Yeah.
My next note is about the humans here. Fantasy world building colloquialism. We talked about a little bit in episode 1. Bronwyn calls this a ground shake instead of an earthquake.
Yeah.
And you made the note about like Earth meaning the planet as opposed to people interpreting it to mean dirt.
Yeah.
But then in the final episode, Nori refers to dirt as Earth.
I think they do it several times throughout this season where they call dirt Earth.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it holds up a candle, but I do think sometimes whenever I see that in a fantasy or sci-fi setting, I know that that's where they're coming from. They're like, oh God, this isn't Earth technically. Like I don't want to call it an earthquake.
Yeah.
But if it's one of those things, it's like if it's distracting, like it's distracting for you. I don't know what was going on in all the review sessions because this obviously went through a ton of review with all sorts of executives.
You would hope.
Yeah. I don't know whose decision it was to call it a ground shake instead of an earthquake, but they could have even just called it a fissure, man.
Right. You could have called it anything else. And then my next note is about Bronwyn's line here. So they find a hole under someone's cabin. Arondir says someone dug this, and Bronwyn says something. Men did not do this. Like, how do you know? Have men never dug a tunnel before in this world? Like, there's no reason to just inherently make that assumption.
Fair. I think this falls under the category of elves being super perceptive again. We get that a few times where the elves are just so darn. They've seen so much.
Arondir says someone. Bronwyn, the human, is the one that tells him that it's not humans that dug it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Then I don't know. I guess maybe she's just trying to stand up for him. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the intention of the line, where she's just like, whoa. Men didn't do this, okay?
Yeah.
We wouldn't destroy a whole village. Maybe that's the intention.
Even though humans destroy whole villages all the time.
Yeah. But, that's their dynamic. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, we're not all bad. I mean, he accepts that narrative from her already.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's one of those examples of, like, a character seems to have perfect knowledge without evidence to back it up.
It's a nice touch at the end where he just, he pulls her back and he essentially says, I'm not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you. But again, without words, as he said earlier, like their communication. He can't say the things that he wants to say to her. I thought that was a nice touch. It's also important later on, his line of like, and she says, "You don't know what's down there," and he goes, "That's precisely why I must go." That line rings in my head later on when she chooses to trap herself in a house with an orc, and she's like, I was when I watched that scene, I think of this previous scene where they go, I don't know what this is. I need to find out what it is. I can't just go back and be like, if I go back to the village and say, like, no, it really is orcs, they're just going to dismiss me again.
Yeah, I have a note about that. Yeah. So this scene here, I'm actually going to defend.
Nice.
Because I've seen a lot of hate in regard to it. Is Elrond talking about the hammer of... Whose hammer is it? Hammer of...
God, I'm forgetting now.
Anyway, the guy that made the Silmarils. It's his hammer.
Yeah. Very tired. I know, because this is on the internet, people are going to be like, how dare he speak up about Tolkien lore when he can't even remember names? I have a small child. I'm coming off of a long day of work. I'm tired as heck right now. So, spare me. Yes. Spare me.
So Elrond's walking around Celebrimbor's office, workshop, whatever, and, like, talking about things. And one of the notes that I've seen complaining about this scene is saying that if you have to give information to the viewer, you need to also be giving information to someone on screen that does not have the information.
Sure.
And so they're saying, like, Elrond is talking about this hammer that made the Silmarils. Celebrimbor knows whose hammer it is, knows that it made the Silmarils. Why is he... But also, like, you can go into a museum and just admire stuff out loud. So I'm going to defend this and just say, like, this is just him, like, oh, wow, this is such a cool thing. It did all these things, and I get to sit here and view it. Not necessarily that he is giving information that Celebrimbor already has.
Sure.
There are scenes later where someone gives someone information they already have, and I will complain about that at that point. But this scene, I actually, as a whole, I'm on board with.
Yeah, I love that they gave the viewers this piece of information, just as, like, understanding where they are as far as the elves' craftsmanship goes, because we don't get a lot of it either. And the elves' craftsmanship is obviously titular, like literally rings of power are going to be made with the things we're talking about here. Yep. So it's important that we get all this information. This is one of those moments that actually tipped me out of it a little bit the first time I watched it, where I was like, it just seems so hokey to just have the hammer on a stand there.
Yeah.
And like, when I think of all the ostentatious, like, elven, murals and stuff, I'm like, this shouldn't just be in somebody's workshop.
That's fair.
But so it almost took me out of this moment, but I was so in love with them sharing the lore when I was watching this. I was just like, okay, whatever. Yeah. Give me the good stuff.
Now, again, this is a place where I'm actually, I can't believe we're switching roles like this. I'm gonna defend this stupid show again. So this is kind of a place where there are things in this that, again, are kind of refuted or gone against by later era from this world's perspective properties. Lord of the Rings happens 3,000 years after these events. So in that context, it could just be, maybe they are building a museum for this hammer, it just hasn't been erected yet. And so right now it's sitting in his workshop.
That tracks, actually, because the place where they actually are is a new city built here just to be close to the dwarves, which I'm sure we're going to talk about real soon.
And that was my original defense for in episode 1 when Arondir says elves don't have healers because in the Lord of the Rings movies and in the books and stuff, they're like, well, Frodo needs elvish medicine.
Sure.
So I was like, well, maybe they had enough instances of someone needing good medicine they didn't have access to. The elves were finally like, fine, we'll figure out how to make medicine over the next 3,000 years. But then in the last episode, they completely go against elves not having healers, so I can't even use that now. But that was my initial defense for that. And then there's a couple of times Celebrimbor like says things and the music does something weird and he makes a face, and I have again like, is Celebrimbor Sauron?
I mean, not a horrible take. I think, like especially in the later episodes, we get to touch on Brimbor's like his ego, his you know, he's definitely not untouched by evil. So I think that's a fair observation to make.
And then my last note about this is Celebrimbor says we have to have this forge built by spring, and then Elrond doesn't ask him why. Yeah. And he never explains why. If someone says, again, coming back to D&D, if someone's like, hey, I need this job done by this point in time, I'm going to ask why.
So, question, do you remember why from watching this before?
Yeah, they need it built by spring because the tree is dying and they need to, Yeah. So, but again, like, why doesn't Elrond ask, why does this need built by spring? It seems like such an arbitrary timeline.
Yeah.
So, it seems very specific to not ask why it's specific.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think this is one of those things where they need the character's in a place where he wouldn't, you know, he's just eager and excited. He gets to work with all of his heroes. He's in a mindset where he wouldn't ask a lot of questions. If you were in his shoes, probably. But also, it is important psychology for the viewer because like unanswered questions stick in the mind more than other things. So they wanted you to as a viewer hold on to that. Like, why would you need this by spring? Like that's. I'm glad it's stuck. Like I do see a ton of people respond the exact same way to that sequence. They're like, why does it need to be done by spring? Like this is you know, they pick it up later, but
well, again, then I think he should ask why. And if you again, you need to either have a reason. Yeah, Elrond should ask why. Mm-hmm. You need to have a reason, or even if Elrond like is. Have Celebrimbor say something under his breath where Elrond can't hear about, like, I need it by spring, or, you know, something about... But then Elrond doesn't want to hustle. You have to find a way to either justify why Elrond doesn't ask without it just being, oh, this is one of his heroes, so he's never going to ask him a question.
I mean, I buy it as a human interaction. I also...
But they're not humans.
I think that's fair. But, I think that the main point of that is just to leave a question on the viewer's mind. Yeah. So you remember this is important.
Again, I know exactly that's why they did it. I just, again, think that the execution of it is extremely lacking.
Just like even a little bit of suspicion or a little bit of... Because Elrond is supposed to be a curious character, so like maybe even if it was just like an eye, like a quick reaction, like
give us something to go on. Yeah, exactly. They travel to Khazad-dûm seemingly almost instantly. No horses, no packs, and then this is another example of conversations happening at the wrong time, because here Elrond is talking about his relationship with Prince Durin. I feel like, again, this is something that should have happened in the workshop. It should have been, oh, you need this built by spring, the dwarves can help us. I have a good relationship with the prince. As opposed to, again, kind of like what you were saying with the buddy cop comedy wrapping up at the wrong place in the journey.
But this, I was gonna say, this is another sitcom trick that is out of place here. And I brought this up in episode 2 where this is a writing technique for TV where you start a conversation in one scene and then you end it in the next scene. As long as the same characters are there, people usually buy it. But when you're traveling this kind of distance, when you literally had a map with dotted lines showing how far you traveled, it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder to buy. I, as a viewer, a first time and a second time and a third time viewer, agree with your note that there's no horses, that there's no packs. This scene has never quite. I love the dialogue, the visuals for this entire sequence are gorgeous, but always throw me out of it, surprisingly. And it all has to do with I guess they just walked this whole distance.
Yeah.
Which is established. It is established later on that they walk this. The dwarves and the elves apparently walk this. Yeah. They even carry a giant table, and they just walk this. So it's established as in-world canon that they just walk this without horses or backpacks or anything. But I guess I should say it's not inconsistent with what we see throughout the season, but it is distracting.
Yeah. Oh, and something here too that I think is done well is he invokes the right of seeing Tarag, and then Celebrimbor asks him, "What is this?" But then they get interrupted before he can answer. So that they could have used exactly that tactic before of, "I need it finished by spring. Why do you need it by spring?" And then, "Hey, there's an emergency. We need you guys to come look at." I know that adds a scene, but it at least solves the problem of why don't you ask him why you need the thing finished by spring.
So this happens, the asking what is that at the end of something we don't know and is about to be explained happens later on for a slightly different reason, but I actually find that distracting. Just as a personal note, I was cool with it when I was watching it the first time, I think, but when I was watching it the second time, I was like, it feels like a cheap line for Celebrimbor. Yeah. It's kind of like, what is it? And then he gets cut off, and it almost has this kind of like MCU kind of like quirkiness to it. It's like, what is it? Oh, I got cut off. Oh, okay. So I actually find that technique distracting myself, but
my next note, I don't like the dwarf beard armor. Being able to turn your head in a fight is pretty useful, and I feel like that would get in the way. Aesthetically, I like it. Practically, I don't. And again, that's one of those things where it's like, I think that practical needs to outweigh everything else. What's the saying? It's like, I don't know. There's a saying about like, do what's practical before what seems nice, but it's not coming to me right now, so we'll move on. Also, like, they got an awful lot of plants growing underground for not having any sunlight.
I mean, they have a lot of water.
But and they have no sunlight.
They do have,
and they are green plants, not like fungi or.
Sure. Well, they are ferns, which is a low light plant, but they do show that they have the mirrors. There's clearly some sort of ambient natural light coming from like behind that waterfall. But so I get the impression that we're supposed to accept this as like more like a crack, not a fully encapsulated.
But then here we see the ceiling.
Yeah. That
fully encapsulates. Yeah, there are mirrors.
There's the mirrors, and then there's like this water has to be coming from somewhere, so I assume that there's like large entrances where this amount of water is pouring. Like I think we almost saw one there in one of those episodes or one of those shots. But like if you look at any of the waterfall, the light source is coming from behind it, so which implies that this water is coming directly from that water basin or whatever we saw outside.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to be remarkable. Honestly, I think Elrond walks in there and he's like, "Holy, how did you get stuff to grow here?" I mean, that's a more potent point later on.
Yeah.
But
and then but then with like the tree in Doran's place, like there is a beam of light that comes directly into it also, and yeah, it's a special tree.
But otherwise, I love all this. I just love all of this. We'll get to Disa later, but like I love their friendship. I think they have amazing lines with each other. You get to see Elrond outside he says, "Let me work my craft," and so his craft is
lying,
bringing people to not lying,
he
bring people together. He wants to bring people together. But it does almost play off as like manipulative. He's got high speech craft.
Yeah.
So that's his craft is understanding people, befriending them, getting them to come together. That's because of his heritage, his half elfness. He's a child of two worlds. He's never really accepted as a full elf, and so he's had to figure out a way to just kind of talk his way through and get people to come to his side constantly. So I love that as his character. That's his character before this show, and I think they do a really cool job of showing it. Just edges on making you feel uncomfortable. You're like, oh, is this immoral? Maybe
he lies a lot, and I have notes about his lying. We'll come back to those.
I'd be willing to bet that they are not actual lies. They're probably misleading the other person. So they're not lies.
No,
they're
they're
misleading.
We'll
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hit me with it.
So, right here, Durin says if Elrond loses, he'll be banished forever, and then that doesn't happen. We'll come back to it later. Again, so it was like, you made this proclamation effectively in front of your entire kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
You better have a real good reason for breaking it later when it comes down.
Sure.
And then I have, do elves get tired or not? Because this whole thing is about them swinging hammers till one of them gets tired. So we find out in a later episode that, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the whole thing, Elrond claims that he forfeited this match and pretended to get tired.
Yes.
But Durin fully buys that Elrond got tired and lost the match.
Yep.
If established lore, elves do not get tired, Durin, being best friends with an elf for 50 years, should know that about him and should never have accepted this challenge in the first place.
Well, I mean,
or should have lost because
he shouldn't have lost because this is obviously Durin brought him here. He took up the challenge because we see this with Gimli and Legolas too, which I'm sure is what they were pulling from, is that like there's the pride of the dwarves and the pride of the elves, and like they don't have perfect knowledge of each other, but like this is something that dwarves are super proud of, and they don't imagine that they could be beaten at. It's just like, this is what we're good at. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Like a flowery tree hugger couldn't beat me at this.
Even one that I know never gets tired.
Well, I mean, I guess we have to assume that they don't know that as a absolute truth about elves. But I do see it in that sequence where it's like Elrond's looking around. He's like, if I beat my friend here, I'm just gonna make him more mad at me because I'm gonna embarrass him in front of all of his friends. So like, when I first watched this sequence, I absolutely bought that this was Elrond being like, okay, I'm gonna throw in the hat here because if there's any chance of me like salvaging this relationship, like I can't just embarrass him here in front of everyone. Like I have to forfeit, let him think he's won. I just want to talk with you. The only way I'm going to get to talk with you is to get you alone on an elevator.
Yeah. Again, like, I get all of that. It just seems like so many other races and so many other places, they acknowledge that elves don't get tired for all of dwarf kind to not also someone have that knowledge, especially someone whose best friend of 50 years is an elf.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. I buy it. I don't challenge it, I guess I should say, because I also don't believe anything we're showing on screen. I don't believe that Durin actually wants to kick Elrond out. He's just testing the friendship. He says, okay, hotshot, you coming back in here and you're gonna pretend to be my friend. Like he clearly loves Elrond. He clearly wants this friendship still because he has the tree in his house. But yeah, this is just one of those things. It's like I don't think he actually wanted to be Elrond either, but yeah.
Yeah. My next note's on the Harfoots. Right here where totally not Gandalf is just like screaming and doing stuff. Is not Gandalf Sauron? I have that note pretty much anytime anyone makes any kind of like slightly angry or mischievous face. Are they Sauron? So, fantasy world building colloquialisms. I actually like the Harfoot sign language, especially for a race of people that hide a lot. Like, it would make sense that they would be able to like signal each other and communicate with each other silently. Cool. So I actually really like that. I do have seems a little sophisticated for everything else that we see in this culture, but I buy it again for the aforementioned reasons. Higgledy Piggledy I actually kind of like. She says something about his mind being all higgledy-piggledy or things going all higgledy-piggledy.
I think that's actually a real slang.
Oh, that's probably why I like it. And then my next note is lend us a foot. However, I think is trying too hard. They ask Nori's dad to help them lift something, and they say lend us a foot. It's like, okay, like we get it. You have big feet. Which someone I saw made the point of like they wouldn't know that they have big feet because they're just the feet that they know. But I get that it's like feet are the hobbits because they're hobbits. Yeah. Feet is kind of their thing. So I get that you want to tie in feet, but the whole lend us a foot thing I think is just too weird.
It's distracting.
But then Mind Your Own Fire, Malva, I actually like.
I like that one a lot too. That one always struck home with me.
Yeah. So that one's good. And again, that one I think is good because it makes its point, and its point makes quick, accessible sense. You don't have to like figure out why it works.
You got lend us a foot as well. Like you get it. It's like you get it. It taps into the back door of your brain. You know what it is. It's there's something else about it that's. I think the branding. Like I think people coming into this show were so hypersensitive to, and for good reason, but hypersensitive to a huge corporation is taking over this IP, and they're going to try real hard to put it on brand. And so all the things that like I know you've been calling out are like essentially like they're trying too hard to put it on brand. What if they didn't do those? What if they didn't do those things? Would it have been a swallowable pill? A swallowable pill? I don't know. But
yeah, I don't know. I think again, there are just a lot of things where it's like just read over it. If it feels I don't know. If it feels too hard, like you're trying too hard, take it out.
Yeah. Maybe it came from them just not showing a lot of people too. Maybe they didn't have big test audiences either.
That's maybe, yeah. I say all the time that before anything gets released, they should let me watch it so that I can. Even like there are some songs that come out where it's like I like all of this song, but I can't listen to it because there's one rhyme that just doesn't fit well, and it drives me nuts. And I'm like, if you just use this word instead, you get the same meaning. It rhymes better. It fits the rhythm better. Like,
cool bit with the stranger about how fate is intertwined with the magic of the world, and just the things that pull on the strings in this world. You see him break this. It's all self-evident. I think it's not invisible. Everyone who watches got it. It's like that as he gets more intense, the situation gets worse. He breaks a stick. His dad breaks his foot. But that's the kind of like resonant magic. I think it's a nice way to tie in resonant magic and the whisperings of fate. Just reminding everyone, like, listen, in this world, like, there's no reason. He doesn't make a voodoo doll of the dad or anything. This is just the world we're in is like butterfly effect on steroids.
Yeah, and this also sets up problems that they have to overcome later. So I do think that this is good.
I did also like this sequence. It gets a little bit into the mystery box territory where like we're misled into believing that he's a bad guy, but I think emotionally, whether or not you're a lore buff or not, right now you need to have the perspective of the Harfoots. This is your understanding of the world, just to get along with them and get along with the characters. So I like that there's enough subtle little nudges to make you suspect that he might be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Just so that you have the emotional capacity to empathize with the Harfoots, because that's what you need to do right now.
Yeah. I also think that totally not Gandalf reminds me of you. Maybe it's just the beard and the way your eyes are like, the way you express with your eyes, but when I see him, I think of you every time.
Oh, thanks, man.
Galadriel swimming to Atlantic Oceans, Deus Ex Machina raft rescue, she pulls the dagger.
To which I say, yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with the dagger in this point. It's a little, hey, don't forget I have this, but also, like, she's out in an ocean that she probably shouldn't be in, as per a lot of my earlier comments. And so she needs to draw it to defend herself against stuff. Then someone calls her a liar, or someone calls someone a liar. And I don't recall when whoever was called a liar lied.
Galadriel is called a liar. And this is the thing that we pointed out in the first episode, or I pointed out in the first episode, is like, she doesn't like it when things are twisted. She's a like, she never lies, but she's called a liar, or because they presume that she's a safe person at first, and then someone makes the lady believe, oh, she's not safe, and so her expectations are foiled. There's a lot of complex things going on. It's Galadriel doesn't like the blind or the misled. She hates that twisting and manipulation. She hates that.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, at that moment, that's another callback to, like, the things that drive her nuts is exactly what that lady just did. Is like, Galadriel didn't lie to anyone.
Yeah.
But she's called a liar because their expectations aren't met.
Yeah. Right there, you liar, when they find out she's not an elf. It's like, she never said she wasn't. So I have here, like, when did she lie?
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, this whole sequence is, like, I love all of the sea stuff. The fateful day. What is it? Fateful field day. Whenever Sauron helps her onto the ship, or Halbrand.
Yeah.
And he says,
"Spoiler alert!
Can't tell if your fate is coming in or out." And you brought up the point that, like, this all feels very Deus Ex Machina. That's because it 100% is.
Yeah.
It is. It's just so that for the lore buffs and stuff, the creatures of the deep, the deep, we call them deep ones sometimes, but like the creatures of the deep water are agents of evil, and so Sauron isn't out there by mistake, and this is brought up explicitly later on in the sequence. I don't know if it's exactly the first sequence or the second sequence when we see him, but he says, like, you don't seem like someone who things happen to by chance. This is
by accident, I think.
Oh, by accident, yeah. So this is how he means for her to hear it is, like, you seem like you're in control, and she buys it like that.
Yeah.
But that's also Sauron saying, like, this is all fate. Well, now the interesting thing is, this comes back to the Sauron, the story of two Saurons. There's either a 4D chess Sauron, or there's the redemption arc Sauron. And so we have to kind of ask ourselves, it's never explicitly answered in the first season. I'm curious to see which one they choose, but I've always kind of read this as, like, Sauron is also here entirely as a plan.
Yeah.
The water monster was sent there to make the excuse for him to be there to meet Galadriel.
Yeah.
Now,
I would like that
Yeah.
if in like the second to last scene of the last episode of the season, if Sauron had said like, I sought you out because I knew like whatever, and I fought you on these things because I knew you were a fighter that just wouldn't accept if I just went with your plan. I wish there were like those, again, just like 2 lines added to justify all of this, because otherwise it does feel accidental, even though he says things don't happen to you by accident.
Yeah. So, and this is like one of those things is like, they might choose never to answer it explicitly. It might be that we have to watch this without ever getting an answer to what happens here explicitly, but it could either be the forces of evil. Sauron might not be totally in control of what happened here, but he might actually be in a Galadriel sort of situation where like he's answering the call, but he's not the hand that moved them there. But only he recognizes that they are both chess pieces. Like he's like, aha, I see you as my counterpart. Like I know why you're here. So, but she does not, because of his form and his pretenses. He does a really good job throughout this of like putting on a face that he knows that she will accept, and being charming and trying to win her over. That seems like throughout this whole first season, as it comes to a head in the last episode too, it's clear that his entire motives through everything we see here is he wants to win over Galadriel. He's trying to corrupt his own elf to be his number 2. And Galadriel's one of the biggest, the baddest elves, and he's been working on that puppy for a while.
See, I don't think at all that he's trying to corrupt his own elf. By everything that we see, I think he genuinely is trying to escape and reform and change. And he sees her as the way to fulfill that change.
I mean, so because they never put a pin in it, I think that reading is valid. I see a lot of support for it in his lines. The problem I have with his lines versus what we're presented in story is the story seems to suggest that he's 4D chess Sauron, based off of everything that we're getting from everyone but him. But the one thing that we know about Sauron is he's misleading. His lines, the only time he ever suggests that he's trying to reform is when he's talking to Galadriel. And so it feels like that's him trying to get her to believe in the best in him to win her over. So, but the story surrounding it, the circumstances surrounding it, seem to suggest no, he's bad. He always will be bad. This all went pretty much exactly the way he wanted.
I think that the only reason we see him talking about that with Galadriel is because he only talks to Galadriel. Like, most of his conversations with other people aren't about his past. They're solely about his future, and all of those are... And this is in episode 2, we get into this a little bit, but it's like, I just want to be a blacksmith in Numenor. Like, that's all I want, that's all I care about, I don't want to do anything else.
There's a cool... I think possibly the original plan, like maybe we'll get some pins in it someday, maybe we won't, but it always strikes me that like he has plans for Numenor. Numenor is set on a path for self-destruction, a path for evil. Those who know the lore know that that's true in the book canon too, is like they turn away elves slowly, and then they slowly kind of like they go on a self-destructive path. They become a hub of evil. That's what we're watching unfold. We're watching the beginning of it in season 1, where the counselor is left there in charge while the queen is away. All the believers are null and void, and now we get Elf Hater McGee in charge. So like we're definitely heading there. I don't know if Sauron's plan was to set up smithing things of power, because he kind of alludes to it in one of the episodes. I forget which, and we'll get there when we do. But he alludes that he's there at Numenor to kind of craft something he has the throwaway lines too, where it's like, "Oh, gee whiz, I just want to be a blacksmith." But then he also suggests that he's like, "No, I have some real plans here." So I'm curious if he didn't intend to wind up at Numenor for longer, and then go to the Southlands, or if this was just like, or if he really did 40 chess it, and it was like, I got to make my pit stop in Numenor, set a couple of things in motion, get the queen out of there, so my boy will be in, and then I'll go finish my plan in the Southlands.
Yeah.
Hard to say for sure. I don't know if we'll get an actual on it.
Yeah. All right. My next note is about. Do you have anything further in the ocean there? My next note is about Elrond lying to Durin.
I could talk for hours about the ocean, unfortunately.
All right. Well, he'll start his own podcast separate from me. Okay. So right here, Elrond and Durin are riding the elevator out, and Elrond tells him like, "Oh, I have a proposal for you," and Durin calls him out. I do say like I actually like Durin. Yeah. Durin calls him out. "Oh, the true purpose of your visit, you want something," and then Elrond is like, "I journeyed here to see a friend that I've greatly missed." It's like, no, you 100% never were considering coming here until Celebrimbor said, "Hey, we need this thing built," and you were like, "Oh, I know the dwarf for the job." Like, maybe eventually you'd have gotten around to coming to his funeral, but it's been 20 years since you've last spoken to him, from what it sounds like. So when he says, like, "I journeyed here to see my friend that I greatly missed, I just also happen to have a proposal for it." It's like, no, you came here for the proposal, and now you're lying to him because he called you out on it and backed you into a corner.
Yeah, I was going to say, a little bit of A and a little bit of B for me. Because, like, on the one hand, I 100% agree with that take on it. Like, it definitely seems disingenuous to say, "Oh, I journeyed here to see my friend." It's probably true. Elrond does value his friends more than anyone. So it's probably true, and I think we see it later on. Like, I agree with you. It feels slimy. We're supposed to take Durin's side here.
In that case, then I think he should have acquiesced. Should have been like, "You know what? You're right. I came here because I have a proposal for you, and you, as my friend, are who I wanted to bring this proposal to." You can find a way to tie those two things together without just blatantly lying and being like, "No, I came here to see you because you're my friend." Like, you definitely came here for the Forge. Yeah. But you can find a way to say, like, "You know what? You're right. I'm here for the Forge, and you, as my friend, I wanted to bring in on this."
Yeah. I think it's a cool emotional beat, the accepting that you're wrong, like getting cornered by Durin, because he has to play defense a little bit more for us to feel like truly cornered. So if we were supposed to believe Elrond was infallible, if Elrond was going to be a character who's always right, then yes. But I'm glad we got this shot at his expense, and we got this side with Durin to be like, "Yeah, you kind of screwed up, dude. Like, you should feel guilty. We feel guilty. I feel guilty and embarrassed for Elrond after seeing how much of denial he was in." Yeah. And I think we're going to have the same notes probably. I think about Disa, but... Disa, I love.
Before we get to Disa, I do have Durin better explain to his people why he's going back on his word and not banishing Elrond. That's it. That's all I have on that.
No, that's fair.
Yeah. I think Disa is a phenomenal character. I have great character, well acted. Go ahead with your further thoughts, and then I have a world building rant to go on.
Okay, I was gonna say, I really love Disa. I love her character. I love that it's an extension of Elrond as far as Durin is concerned. Simply because, like, we get to know so much about Durin through introducing her character, which is really cool.
I get to know so much about Durin during his time with Disa.
There's gonna be a lot of those.
We trying to name this podcast. We had a good few dozen puns that we came up with before settling on the MacGuffin and the red herring.
Yeah. So yeah, when you hang out with this one, you learn to expect it. I love that Disa tells us so much about Durin. A lot of people were like, a lot of the backlash I saw was people hated that Disa wore the pants in the relationship, but I'm like, they're just a really comfortable couple, and he wants somebody to put him in check in a loving way.
Yeah.
And I also love that she is kind of this magical person whose whole role and job is to understand.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn this about Durin. Is that like he has a harsh father who does not know him. His motives and his will are unknown to his father, really. And so he's always looking for these people of understanding, of kind of whimsy, someone to bring a little bit of lightheartedness to him.
Yeah.
And so when we see Disa and we see Elrond and Disa hit it off, and you kind of compare the two, and you go like, you married your best friend, kind of.
Yeah. I'm saying this for me is kind of a sitcom trope that works, where it's like the wife is always like teasing, picking at the husband, but ultimately they both love and care about each other and support each other. Mm-hmm. I think their relationship is phenomenally well done until like the last episode. But but yeah, I think the two of them are great together. I think the way that they influence and bounce off of each other, I think is exactly the right style of relationship to have in this. I never looked at it as a who's wearing the pants thing. I just always just like they both serve the role in the relationship that they need to serve.
Exactly.
I don't think there needs to be this power struggle.
Yeah.
Power struggle. Yeah.
But that's a whole nother topic. You could absolutely at me in the comments about this. I would love to have this discussion with you if you felt that this was a Disa wearing the pants thing. I always took it as like just the fact that she was so outspoken. I think there's a certain amount of people who were just ready for the to call woke on this character and just be like, she just rubs me the wrong way. And so they're like, look at how, isn't he the king? Yeah. And so, like, why is she calling the shots? Why is she talking to him like that? And to those people, I say, perhaps look inward.
I think you're looking into that too much. In the interest of calling woke, I will say a lot of the marketing around this was, look how diverse our cast is. And so I think that put people a little a little on edge and made people think like, oh, they're just doing this for the sake of doing this and for the sake of the marketing, rather than because it's good for the story necessarily. And we talked about this specifically a little bit before we got started on here, and I 100% agree with you that I think, what's her name, Sophia Namvidi, the lady that plays Disa, I think was exactly the right casting choice. She does a phenomenal job playing this character. From a world-building standpoint, I will say that darker-skinned people have darker skin because of generations of exposure to excessive sunlight. So having black dwarves does make your world-building a little something you need to be aware of and address. Now, on the flip side of that, I think when we get to Numenor, they're a seafaring nation in a tropical land. Everyone in Numenor should be dark-skinned. Yeah. If that's, again, something that you're concerned about when you're building your world, is having it feel accurate to how the physics and chemistry of our world works.
I think part of the casting... So here's the thing, is Sophia was absolutely the right choice. Her voice is amazing. Her look is amazing. She looks beautiful in this role. Like, she's just so the right choice. Like, I can't. It's hard for me to picture somebody else who would be better than how she pulled it off here. I think that a part of what they were trying to get away from and what rubs people wrong about this, and this is not your position, but just for the people who it does rub wrong, is the fact that you have, essentially, like, we've gotten so used to, like, that mentality of, like, if it's part of the world, like in the real world, we've been isolated by generations, and that's why we have these different traits. You're correct in identifying that, but like, what rubs people the wrong way is like, why isn't all of Numenor black? Well, then if you make everyone there black, it doesn't really feel diverse. And maybe the response is maybe it shouldn't, but like the whole point of this is just like, just get the right person for the job. There's so many, I'm going to use air quotes here, colorblind casting choices for like offspring that are like the regent queen of Numenor looks like she has different heritage than the father.
But we don't see her mother,
but we don't see the mother. But there's so much of that throughout. I think that's what triggered a lot of people. So they're just like, no, this doesn't make sense. I'm used to everyone that lives close to each other looks the same way.
Yeah.
But when you live in a big city like we do, you don't know who you're gonna bump into.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit easier to swallow that pill. But anyways, I'm taking a hyper aggressive stance against it, and I'm definitely being a little antagonistic. But
then, in the interest of diversity in casting, there are like no Asian people in this.
There's actually, yeah.
Who?
They're not big.
Oh, so like background people.
There's.
But again, from a world building standpoint, I was like, the Harfoots are nomads. The Mongols were nomads.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you want what people expect is that all people of a certain style and region look the same way.
Yeah.
That would have been.
But
I
think that's the exact opposite of how the showrunners wanted it. And maybe that's again what people reacted to is like, the showrunners didn't want to cast based off of stereotypes or archetypes. They wanted to cast based off of whether or not they were the right person for the role, and have a truly diverse casting process. At least this is my impression and everything that I've read from the interviews and stuff. And so, like, if you just made all of the Harfoots of Mongolian descent, you would have the exact same. It would be stereotyping. It would be kind of like, you would have the same problems that essentially they're trying to avoid. And the fact that I think people are aware of that. People are getting more and more aware of like how Hollywood works, and they're like, wait a second, like, you had a truly open casting. No one wants to admit that this is the thought that they have. They're like, oh, you had a truly open casting thing, but you didn't consider it, as like having a cultural trait tied to a look. They don't want to admit that they were expecting stereotypes. They don't want to admit that they were expecting things that are in our world that are slowly fading away. That's what you expected. This is not what you get, because times are changing. Deal with it. That's my stance.
Yeah. Again, like, I fully support diversity in casting. Again, if you're building a world, build a world.
I don't see any problem with this world, with the casting that they made. It looks awesome.
I think maybe this is. I don't know. We can leave it there. I think that's enough. Let's see. Next note I have is about singing to the stone. Is Singing to the Stone something in the Silmarillion? Because again, for me, that feels very Dragon Age.
I don't recall it being in there, but that doesn't mean it's not in there. Yeah. I don't have encyclopedic memory of the Silmarillion, but I don't recall it being in there. Yeah. I think it's something that they made up.
Yeah, which again is something I'm pretty sure is in Dragon Age. So again, it just feels like another thing. My next note: fantasy world building colloquialisms. How many times can we shout Owlie's beard in one scene? Because they say it like three times.
I think it might be that every shot with dwarves in it after this one they say Owlie's beard.
Yeah,
like literally.
In this one, they say it multiple times. Yeah. I literally I'm going back through and working on something that I'm writing right now, and I literally just pulled a similar phrase out of something that I'm writing because again, I was just like, this feels like I'm trying too hard to make it feel like it's its own world instead of just rolling with it. But overall, I like the dinner scene. I think it accomplishes exactly what it needs to accomplish. Story-wise, I think it develops their characters really, really well. My next thing is Galadriel now floating on a raft across two Atlantic Oceans instead of trying to swim them. Mm-hmm. So, at least she's got some manner of transport now.
That's good. I love the hot girl, the gym girl pose that Sauron takes her. Like, oh, this old thing. Like, you look down my shirt. Like, definitely not showing off his butt to her. Yeah. Trying to catch her eye. Yeah. Like, oh, don't look at this old pendant that I'm wearing. That's not important.
Yeah. So my next note is about she says, why did you leave those people to die? I'm simply wondering what manner of a man would so readily abandon his companions to death. When it's like, she abandoned all those people too. They were all in a position of, we take care of ourselves and maybe survive, or we try to stick together and potentially all die. Like, as soon as she saw the monster, she hightailed it out of there too, and then she calls him out on abandoning them. It's like, I have zero issues with her swimming away from the raft. I do have a little bit of, I want to call hypocrite when she's like, hey, why did you do the exact same thing that I just did?
Okay. So, I mean, it calls back to just her own mutiny, right? Like, she has, she's not right to call it. She doesn't have a moral high ground here. Mm-hmm. So she's definitely dealing with some of her own. I abandoned my own ship. I just went through a mutiny where my people abandoned me. Like she's working. This is a her thing, not a him thing. Mm-hmm. But she's trying to suss out who he is, and she thinks she's the clever one. That's the thing I love about this whole sequence. Mm-hmm. Is we put an angel, maybe even a fallen angel, and the devil on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and we just, like, if this was a stage play, mm-hmm. I would watch this. I would watch the heck out of this. Yeah. To just watch the angel think that they're getting the better mm-hmm. of the devil, but the devil's talking circles around her constantly.
I mean, it's almost waiting for Godot.
No, 100%.
Oh, here. So he says, as Chris said, mm-hmm. you don't have the look of someone to whom things happen by accident, which means you're running. And then he says, whether toward or from something, I haven't yet decided. Mm-hmm. And there's a line from the TV show Dollhouse, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen it, where one of the characters, Topher, says, if you ever see someone running really fast, you have to ask yourself, are they running to something or from something? And the answer is always both.
Yeah.
It's like you're running from danger towards safety.
Yeah.
That's effectively the whole breakdown of it. But I just like the way that that's said. So when he brings this up, I'm just like, oh yeah, like she's doing both, running to something and from something. Yep. I think it's good of Halbrand to bring up orcs to get on her side. He now knows she's trying to find and kill Sauron, which is a point I will bring up again later.
This whole sequence is she's trying to figure out him. She fails miserably, and he sorts her out. Sorts her out top to bottom. Yeah. Figures out once he makes sure that he knows exactly who he's talking to. He waits until the absolute last minute to just kind of drop out. Oh, orcs.
Yeah, they ran me out of my homeland.
You know the thing that you're hunting, you're most voracious for. Yeah, there's some orcs over there. Just so you know. You could join me if you wanted, I guess.
And then I have a note, like, she's making a lot of demands for someone stranded at sea. She's just like, yeah, you're gonna come back and help me fight orcs in the Southlands. Like, you're at least 4,000 miles from the nearest bit of land. Well, which also begs the question of, how far did she swim and how far did they sail in order for them to meet out here?
Yeah. I think
if they were sailing from the Southlands and got close to Valinor, that's a long way.
They're sailing from Lindon originally.
I'm saying his ship was sailing from the Southlands.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're definitely... I'm sure people have figured it out on a map. But,
Valinor is 7,000 miles from Middle-earth.
Okay.
That's a long way to sail on whatever they were sailing on, and that's a real long way to swim.
Let's say that the mists are definitely before that, but yeah, and it's also a very long ways away from Numenor too. So, like, if you triangulated Southlands, Lindon, and they have to be kind of close to Numenor. Like they've got to be west of Numenor.
Yeah.
And probably north, I would guess.
Yeah.
Just a touch, but I'm sure somebody's actually figured it out.
Yeah. All right, back with the humans. And then so she comes in to the tavern telling everyone there's a problem. And I said, oh, interesting, more people wanting proof and not just hearsay.
So...
And also the people that are asking for proof are always wrong, which ties me back to my moral message earlier of just believe it and it's true, and if you don't believe it, then you're the bad guy.
Well, so, again, I hear you. I think that is a poor message to take away. I don't think that's how it's intended. I think...
That may not be how it's intended, but that's how it's delivered.
Well, I was going to say, we know this guy is bad news. He's constantly manipulating everyone against the elves. He's constantly... We know by the end of this season that he's an agent of Sauron.
Yeah.
We know that because...
Is he a direct agent of Sauron, or is he just like, oh man, wouldn't it be nice?
He's like a wannabe cult leader. Like he would like to be someone in charge under Sauron, but from everything we get on screen, I gather that like Sauron hasn't been... The books of Sauron haven't been legal in this land for a while.
Yeah.
So that's why he has the hilt stashed away in his barn.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, he found a copy of an occult book, and he's like, oh yeah, man, this is my jam. So he wishes he was a cult leader, but like I don't think he's an actual sleeper agent unless there's some real big magic going on here.
Let's see. Every time Theo yells, I think of the boy from Robin Hood Men in Tights running from Rottingham, and his like that's just the sound he makes when he screams. Just sounds exactly. Let me unmute. Okay.
I'm sorry to the actor. You did a phenomenal job.
You did a great job. It's just a me thing. Also, like, he thinks it's mice under the floorboards. I imagine he's heard mice under the floorboards before. I have a hard time believing that they sound like orcs digging a tunnel.
Yeah. He says they've been real bad lately, but...
Yeah. Then we have Arendir. I don't care for the big claw design on the orcs. I always thought they had more human-looking hands. Again, I'm kind of chalking that up to, like, maybe over the next 3,000 years they evolve more human-looking hands. But you would also think that if they were created from elves, they would have more elf-like hands, not claws.
So this is,
and some of the later orcs do have more like normal hands, not claws.
So this is one of the things that, like, this is a piece of world building that's never said explicitly, and maybe they should have. But there's essentially kind of like bioengineering going on in both Tolkien's actual notes and books and what we're seeing on screen. I took it as a callback to kind of like the experiments on the orcs and stuff. So these are not strictly Uruk. These are like the mole men. They engineered certain orcs to be for digging. So they're biologically engineered Uruk adjacent creatures. So they're not commander orcs. They're a different unit in your strategy game.
I can buy that. Yeah.
I was very much relieved to see that lantern does not come up out of the water. Sometimes that might be a low bar, but
heavily. Can no one breathe quietly when they're hiding from things? I have a note about that with Bronwyn here in a second too. Like and I get that it's a thing in every TV show, every movie. Whenever someone's hiding, they breathe so heavily. I'm like, learn to breathe quieter. Like, it's not that hard. So in here, I have a note of originally when she talks to like Theo hiding in the walls, and he says like, go get help. Originally, I was like, why does she hide? Why doesn't she go get help? But I've reconciled that like right now she's a little boy who cried wolf, and nobody's listening to her because she just talked to them about the tunnels. And so I support her decision to stay and get evidence. Hey, look at that! Someone finally supporting one of their claims with actual evidence.
Yeah, and this is like one of those things again that, like, you know, it calls back to the line we just heard. It's like, you don't know what's down there. Yeah, that's why I gotta go.
But then like here, she just leaves Theo in the wall. I'm like, you could pull him out and send him to go get help. Like I feel like there's enough time in here by the time she runs and hides. Like, she could have gotten out of the door. She chooses not to get out the door. She could have pulled him out of that tunnel, him run out the door, and then she could have stayed behind to fight the orc.
So it would be interesting to me. What I took from this was a couple of things. Is A, she decides she doesn't want to leave until she knows what it is. But also, like, if you run out in the open, like Theo was hiding, if you just ran out in the open from something that you don't know what it is, like, it would be like, oh, you're running out in the open. I guess I better hope that I run faster than it, because it's definitely going to see me.
But again, if she sends Theo running, then he's at least away from whatever the danger thing is, and then she can stay here and whatever her plan is. And here she's breathing so heavily inside this closet. I'm like, just learn to breathe quieter.
I think under, this is kind of one of those horror movie tropes where, like, is there a better decision to make here? Maybe, but, like, you're not thinking clearly, and also, like, the people in this circumstance know less than we know as a viewer. So she's like, she doesn't know that she's working with orcs. She doesn't know, like, why Theo chose to hide rather than run. Like, she's just like, I guess I'm not going to leave my son here. I don't know what this is. I got to figure it out. Running seems like the worst option.
And again, like, I support her hiding because of the aforementioned reasons. Theo's good with a lasso. Like, he just instantly drops that rope around the orc's neck from the next floor up. That's not... Maybe it's easier to do than what I'm imagining it being, but that just, to me, seems like... And look how strong that thing is.
Really strong.
Oh my god! How many big sharp things do they have in this house? Theo stabbed it with like a pair of hedge clippers, and then she stabbed it with this enormous knife thing. There, he just like instant lassos it, jumps off the thing, and then like it's still got the other giant knife stuck in its back, and then she goes and finds another giant knife to go decap it with.
Yeah.
Just for a little healer's hovel, you got an awful lot of big, dangerous, sharp things.
Yeah, so this is also living out on the countryside. You got to fend for yourself. You know this.
Yeah, but it's like that scene in Twister when they're hiding in the barn and they just see like all the sides and stuff swinging on the walls. And she just screams, "Who are these people?" and then they believe her when she brings in the orchid. I say, "See what happens when you supply evidence? People listen."
So all the rest of your complaints about this being morally bankrupt are now obsolete because they just said that this is how you should do things. So, yeah. So they do send that message, and
but then there's a lot of more times later where they don't send that message. All right, so now we're in the storm with Galadriel. She is tied to a mast, and then falls overboard and starts sinking. Like, doesn't wood float?
I mean, I'm curious to see how this unfolds again. I'm trying to remember what the heck happens here. Mm-hmm. I was like, how does she get in there? She just flips over? Or?
Lightning, hits the raft and blows her into the water, and then she starts sinking. Yeah, lightning hits the raft. She gets knocked into the water while she's tied to this mast.
My biggest qualm with this whole sequence is how they come back up. I'm sure you have that note too.
Definitely have notes on that too. So right here, that's made of wood. Everything she's tied to is made of wood. Why is she sinking? And then, spoiler alert, Halbrand is Sauron. We know Halbrand is Sauron. Sauron knows Galadriel's entire life purpose right now is to kill him. When she goes overboard, why does he save her?
That's right. So that's why I buy the 4D. That's why I subscribe. One of the main reasons why I subscribe to the 4D chess Sauron. We know that he's trying to win her over. He's trying to turn her into one of her pawns. She's a valuable asset. He would. So, if we went the he's trying to redeem himself route, maybe this is his twisted inverse of the Big Brother speech, where it's don't let her seek, you have to raise her up for your own redemption.
Well, but again, I think this is evidence as to why I think he's on the path of redemption and trying to be better. If someone who's sworn to kill me is dying,
but she's just such a super valuable asset. He wants her in the plan, just because A, she's powerful, and B, he just knows how good it is to have an elf commander on his side. But at any rate,
good dagger use here.
That's precisely why I buy the 4D chess thing, is because I think that he's always been after Galadriel as a piece to add to his army. That's why the brother was sent back with the brand, with the dagger. It says, "No, you don't give up the hunt, Galadriel. Here's a big old spoonful of loss and anger, and here's a brand of where to find me. Don't forget this symbol. I branded it on your brother's chest, so you won't forget it. By the way, here's an implement of war that you definitely should never forget. So don't let any of this go. This should fester in the back of your mind for the rest of your life. Okay, come find me." So this is one of the main reasons why I subscribe to the 4D chess Sauron. Reading of this. Again, they don't explicitly say for sure which reading is correct in the first season. I'm hopeful that by the end of the whole show, we will know for sure which one he is. But in season 1, we don't have anything to stable it down to. But I'm going to subscribe to that because that's what it is in the books, and that's everything except for the honeyed words that come out of his lips seem to suggest it to me. And the honeyed words that come out of his lips, in contrast to what's going on in the world, to me, is exactly what I would expect from a deceptive character, a masterfully deceptive character who's trying to manipulate specific people in the world. So, That's why I think the way that I do.
Yeah. And then my next note is like, why does she magically regain consciousness on the swim back up to the surface?
Yeah.
I like that this was good use of the dagger here. Like, you use the dagger to cut something. That works. That makes sense. You didn't use the dagger to point to a map that only you were looking at while you were holding it. Good dagger use here. And then, yeah, it's like she's completely unconscious and helpless underwater. And then on the way up, she, breaches the surface, gasping for air, and is able to swim back to the raft.
This was a distracting moment for me as well. Tinfoil hat. I have no reason to believe this other than it makes a lot of sense to me. But I think there was probably a shot in there where he used a little bit of magic kiss of life. Like, he breathes air into her lungs, so he cuts her loose.
Yeah.
Gives her a kiss to breathe air into it. And I think it was probably too misleading for some producers. They're like, we've got to cut something.
Yeah.
This is telling people that they're romantically interested, which they're not supposed to be. And
Are they?
Like early suggestions that he might have magical powers, which is going to tip too many people off. So I think they probably I suspect there was probably a kiss of life shot in there where he resuscitates her underwater, but they had to cut it because it was problematic for leading people, and they had to cut time. But that I have no reason to believe that other than my own, you know what shot's missing in here?
Yeah.
This one.
Well, then, I mean, at that point, then maybe... Yeah, don't lose your tinfoil. Then maybe... I missed the line I wanted to see. Then maybe, cut all of that out and just, cut to them laying on the raft breathing again. You know, something where it's you see him, cutting the thing out, and then they're on the raft, they're okay. And then it cuts out that whole,
It might be a little jarring if they cut right back up to it,
well,
but
they need to reshoot it. You had $1 billion budget.
Yes, I agree. I think if you wanted to keep the shots that were there, they should have done a shot of her conscious underwater.
Yeah.
Help me, I'm
Yeah.
stuck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the one shot you needed to redo for that one.
Yeah, that works too. Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. Fantasy world building colloquialism. Everything's gone 3 rabbits to the moon. Again, I'm like, that just... it doesn't really mean anything. And again, yeah, it's just trying too hard. Like everything's gone, word I don't think we can say on YouTube, up. Yeah, again, find a phrase that still makes the point you're trying to make without trying too hard and that actually means something.
All these cows have gone udders up.
Yep. Yeah, I'd buy that. The cows are udders up. Yeah, I'm here. I'd buy that more than 3 rabbits to the friggin' moon. I like him talking to the bugs, something Gandalf is known to do. And I have, is not Gandalf Gandalf?
Yeah.
And then when the bugs die, I have, is not Gandalf Sauron?
Yeah. That's as intended as far as I can tell.
Yeah. That, again, this scene, I think, other than the 3 rabbits to the moon nonsense, I think they nailed this scene pretty well.
I loved it. I loved the line, I don't speak Firefly.
Yeah.
I love that line so much.
Yeah, that was good. World building, fantasy colloquialism, holding the long end of the hammer, I'm cool with. Like, that one feels dwarvish and it makes sense. It's like we have the leverage. We're holding the long end of the hammer. That one I'm here for.
What about sandstone and new granite?
What's that?
What about sandstone and new granite? You've always had sandstone. There's sandstone in your granite as far as the elves are concerned.
Sandstone in your granite. Yeah, I'm okay with that one. It says you've always had a soft spot, and again, it feels dwarvish.
Yeah.
No trust between hammer and rock, I say, is trying too hard, though.
What? Okay, I'm really curious here as a thought experiment. What is it? Can we single out what aspect of that is offensive? And I don't mean this as attack on like
what aspect of there can be no trust between hammer and rock?
It feels like it's trying too hard. What is the offensive part?
Again, I think it's I think it's another one of those, like, it's personifying things that don't... It personifies things in a way that doesn't function. Again, like, rocks don't look up or down. Boats don't look up or down. Rocks don't trust. Hammers don't trust. There's no... Like... And in this situation, who's the rock and who's the hammer? If you're dwarves, shouldn't you kind of be both? Like, are you saying the elf is the rock? There can be no trust between hammer and rock.
I think this is like a piggyback off of the long end of the hammer here. Like,
yeah.
We've set up that we're going to use hammer as like a motif for this conversation. This is a very like they're talking about wisdom, so they're using metaphor and they're trying to use like proverbs.
Yeah. But again, I'm saying back to what I said before about metaphors is they take something that is known and understood and use it to explain something that is known but not understood. And so, or not known or not understood. So it's not known that rocks don't trust hammers. So how are you using that to clarify that you can't trust the elf?
What is the setup before this? What is the line just before this?
Elrond is a friend. I trust him. There can be no trust between hammer and rock.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go a couple more lines then.
Eventually, one or the other must surely break.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say like, I think. So the subtext I always got out of this was, we're in conflict.
Yeah.
Like, and I forget what line of dialogue connects. We have the long end of the hammer and him making the metaphor of rocks and hammers.
There isn't anything that connects those. It's just I trust Elrond, and then there can be no trust between hammer and rock. The eventually one or the other must surely break, I think, is a good note to land on. Again, it's just the journey there, I think, is trying to shoehorn in too much.
Yeah, I think so. The subtext I always got it, like the message I got from that scene. Maybe there's better lines for it, but I always understood it as just being like, you think you're in control of the situation, son. Like, you're naive, but we're at conflict with them. These are our enemies. Like, you think you're in control. You might have a grip on Elrond, but like, we are in conflict. This will only end with one of us as the winner.
Yeah.
And you got to understand that.
Yeah. Again, I agree with the destination. I think the journey needs work.
Sure. Yeah, I think I got it. I got it when I was watching it. I'm wondering what a better version would be.
Yeah. Well, if I was a writer on a show with a $10 billion or with $1 billion budget, maybe I'd come up with something better.
Just write us.
Yeah, put something in the comments. We're gonna rewrite all of the bad stuff.
If you have $10 billion or whatever,
just if you just want to send it to us,
yeah,
we're here for it. You know, we'll pay the taxes on it. It's fine. Theo, I just have is Theo Sauron, and then that's the last note I have for this episode. All right, closing thoughts on episode 2.
The first 2 episodes, I love. I'm gonna have less to say about the episodes as we go on. I love this episode. I love everything about it. I think even my critiques of it were nitpicky. I guess besides, like, I think the hardest scenes for me, the biggest problems, I guess I should say, were the Elrond and Celebrimbor arriving at Khazad-dûm, and
so just anytime someone's traveling and talking, you don't like it.
That's a total misunderstanding of what I'm saying. But but then the The other one would be the coming out of the water, just because I feel like here's the thing is this is how everyone always justifies their criticism of it. It's like, you had so much budget. How are there errors? If I never knew what the budget was for this, I'd be like, man, you guys did a bang up job. Even with that one, I'm not. This is not for the editors. I'm gonna say this editing error. Like this is clearly a cut. This is something that came together in the editing bay. That it was like, oh, there's a little bit of a lack of cohesion there, but like we just have to deal with the footage that we have because we don't have the pool again. We can't rent the pool again to reshoot.
With everything they can do with CG and green screening now, I feel like they could have done that without the actual pool.
Yeah, and that comes back to the you had the budget argument. I do know that probably by the time they were in the editing room, this is the one thing I will say is a lot of the problems that we're probably going to encounter did probably happen very late in the process. And even though we look at them having this much budget, they also had that budget was probably mostly for the filming process of it. They have a ton of actors. They have a ton of very talented actors who demand high cost. They probably shot at a ton
none of them are big names though.
Not here.
So like you can get them.
Not here, yeah, but then they're like, they also had a lot of locations that they were shooting at, and a lot of the post, the special effects and stuff were already done for those shots when they were probably in the editing bay, and so that shot in particular of them coming back up to the surface and everyone's awake now, everything's fine. That feels like that came really, really late in the process when probably all the budget and time was probably already drained. But and so I think that's a bad argument to always be like, well, you guys had no budget. They did have a huge budget. You're correct, and they probably used a lot of it, if not all of it, to make what you see on the screen. Mm-hmm. You should tell your parents that you love them and be thankful for the stuff that you have. Be thankful for what you have over your head. This took a lot. It's impressive that it ever was made in the first place. I'm sorry to bash your opinion, but yeah, like it probably did take that much to make this show, and there's going to be mistakes that we have to be forgiving of, even with that much money.
But again, I parallel to Game of Thrones in its first few seasons didn't have this many problems and didn't have nearly the budget, nearly the attention. So again, if my complaints are there's inconsistencies in storytelling, there's inconsistencies in character perceptions, there's inconsistencies in dialogue, those are all things that should have been fixed before they started shooting.
But that show was mostly done. There is not a ton of post effects, so there's not a lot of CG. There's less steps in the process between filming and the finished line.
Yes, yeah, I don't think any of that should affect the quality of storytelling.
Well, so for that particular shot, we're getting hyper specific here, but for that particular shot of them coming out of the water, that feels like a probably really last minute edit. Like there's got to be a missing scene in there, and they're like, how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to...
For that specific shot, I'll agree with you.
Yeah.
But again, there are so many other issues in, again, the dialogue and the storytelling. Like, Elrond just blatantly lying to Durin. Like, you could have done something to fix that. There are just so many... Again, all of my little points about how did this get through, these are all things that should have been done before they started filming, because most of them are storytelling and script concerns. So like that should have been done before they started filming.
So we're getting hyper specific again, but the Elrond example, like I kind of like how slimy it makes me feel. It makes me take Durin's side immediately. It helps me see the fault in Elrond, to see him straddle the line of truth. You know what I mean? Like, and he gets caught in
Blatantly lie?
No, because I don't think it's a blatant lie. I think he does. He is actually there to meet his friend. And he does. There is obviously still a lot of love between him and Durin, but it's definitely not the most forthcoming. Like he was definitely there on a mission. He was definitely there on business, and just happened to be visiting his friend while he was in town. But it's also not true that like he's there because he's friends with Durin. Like, would he have gone to any other dwarf place? I don't think so.
No.
But so my takeaway is he's not lying.
But again, it's not like he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go visit my friend," and then Celebrimbor was like, "Oh, while you're there, see if they'll help us build this forge." It was, "I need a forge built by spring," and then we never find out. Well, we find out,
it's and then slimy, it's misleading, it's manipulative, but I don't think it's lying. And I think that it's actually I appreciate that in the writing. There was probably a better version of that line. You could always say that, but I actually appreciate it because it helps us get immediately and emotionally, like, oh, you're in the wrong, Elrond. Like, you just, as you're watching this, and he says that.
But again, I think that if he immediately jumps to apologizing, then he admits that he's in the wrong. And we still get that he's in the wrong. If he just goes to, you know what, you're right, I did come here for a business deal. I'm bringing the business deal to my friend, whom I have missed and care about. But I did come here for a business deal.
I think I like the emotional beats, and this is just down to personal taste. It's like, but I like those emotional beats of like being on board with Elrond, so you're rooting for him, and then you have to kind of like, oh, no, you're a bad person. You're kind of doing them dirty right now, and then Elrond, Durin sticking it to Elrond at the end and being like, you like making a really clear, articulate, angry point about you done me dirty, homie. Mm-hmm. And he goes, oh, like having to like no, this dagger belongs in your heart. And I'm like, oh no, you're right, man. I don't think Elrond, like my emotional plot points there. I don't think Elrond has fully he's definitely I don't think Elrond is fully redeemed himself at the end of it by apologizing either. Like I don't think he's fully accepted the wrong that he's done until like a couple episodes later, actually. So I think that's one of those things. It's like I kind of like the journey. I like the emotional journey of it. Mm-hmm. It's not a direct path, but I like feeling those feelings. I like relating to those characters in those moments because I've been Elrond in my life. I've been Durin in my life. I've been in those conversations, and honestly, it's kind of one of those things that we get out of fantasy where you just get those like, yeah moments, like, yeah, did really feel that, like, and you get that in high fantasy a lot, where like you can relate to those moments when you were Durin and you're like, yeah, man, you try to defend yourself, but you were just wrong.
so maybe let me try this.
Mm-hmm.
You said that Elrond said, you know, you're ploying your craft, let me ploy mine to Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
Elrond's craft being that he is good at communicating with people to bring them together and get what he needs out of them.
Yeah, manipulating.
So in that scene, I think there should have been, if not a more apologetic way like what I'm suggesting, I think there should have been a better way for him to approach that to get the manipulation in, rather than just blatantly saying like, no, I came here for my friend, after he says, hey, I came here to bring you a proposal.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah. Maybe.
And again, as far as using the budget to defend points goes, I'm gonna turn this way. It's probably too late now, but whatever. Again, most of my complaints are not things that happened in post. So most of my complaints are not, well, we ran out of budget at this point.
Sure.
So that's why I'm saying,
a writing thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have a team of professional writers, they should be able to figure out how to navigate those conversations without selling short their characters that way. Dialogue is also something in my personal writing that I know I struggle with. So I've put a lot of time and effort and energy into learning different ways to communication styles and things to try and bring those things out. So again, it feels like if you're a professional writer at this level, it's not like you wrote the Mythica movie series, which are a really fun romp. They're horrible, but in like the good way. Highly recommend them because of how like good bad they are. So
I was gonna say with as much skill as I see across the board, specifically because it probably was different teams doing different sections, but as much skill as I see surrounding the dwarves, the Elrond and Durin section of the story, I see so much skill in their dialogue that I have to believe that this was a choice. And also, just like personally, I'm liking the flavor. So they served me up a flavor I like, and when I look at the surrounding, I say, this is deliberate. Maybe you don't like this flavor, but I think this was deliberate. I got the flavor that I was looking for out of it, and I think that was a choice. That's just a choice they made.
Yeah.
Different genre.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's episode 2. Let us know if you agree with us, disagree with us. Try to keep it civil, like what I think we do. I don't think we're too like harsh on each other's opinions.
No, not on each other.
Yeah,
but I definitely.
Yeah, I mean, in my head I am, but outwardly.
Yes, please do keep it civil. We prefer civil. I know I tend to get a little antagonistic, and honestly, I am. We wouldn't be doing this if we weren't interested in taking ideas and pitting them against each other. So I'm not afraid for someone to even thoroughly contradict me. Please do. Yeah. We prefer civil, but if you must fight dirty, I will fight in kind. So choose your weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Have a good night or morning or mid-afternoon. What other times of day are there? We can cut it off.